Hi, I'm Lauren Kemp,
And I'm Bridget Price.
and this is Entrepreneurs in Progress. So, we often hear about the exciting aspects of entrepreneurship, like being your own boss, making your own hours, and getting hella rich. But we don't always hear about, the bruises to our ego, the bruises to our wallets, and our brands. I mean, unless you've been listening to this podcast, you've been hearing some of that. But, it's just a wild ride being an entrepreneur, which is why we felt it was important to chat about our highs and our lows. It's just inevitable. So Bridget and I wanted to discuss the ups and downs and what we've learned over time to help manage this roller coaster. So let's get started.
So Lauren, I like to think that there are stages that we all experience in entrepreneurship. And I think in life we go through various stages, but I think there are several distinctive stages that every entrepreneur will experience throughout this journey. So first, you have the ideation and inspiration stage. During that point in this process or this stage, you're super excited, right? We've talked about the idea high before in previous episodes and how we're excited to share these ideas. And this is kind of when you start doing the research and you're starting to determine the viability around your idea. And this is where that high can quickly come plummeting down.
Depending on who you are.
Definitely depending on who you are. Some people see potential hurdles as a challenge and they want to take it on, and that kind of drives or spikes their high even more. Others can look at that and be super intimidated and scared. So even in this stage, I feel like I've gotten stuck because I've gotten super high on emotion and excitement. And then depending on the idea I'm exploring, I'm quickly brought back to earth. Have you felt the same in this beginning stage?
So I'm a little different. I definitely have the idea high where I feel the best. And I feel like the planning stage and the research stage is still part of that high for me because I enjoy planning. I enjoy figuring out strategy and all that. And so in my mind, the ideation, the planning, it's still part of that high because I haven't experienced any failure yet. I haven't executed. I haven't done anything. So you think you're going to be a massive success in the beginning. So I'm not even worried about I don't hit low yet until actually executing. But there are times where, I've talked about researching and seeing other people who have that same idea. And it doesn't feel like a low to me when I'm like, no, I don't want to jump into this because I don't know. It doesn't bother me as much as actually going out and doing something and then failing at it. So it's kind of like that stage before.
Yeah. I would agree. I think it depends on who you are, and it also depends on what you find. So, if you are planning, and this has happened with me, and you see that there's this wide open land, right? No one's really dominated this field or space. That is super exciting. So now my high is just increasing. But if it's, a complicated space or one that is just oversaturated, you're like, okay, maybe I should reconsider this. I think there are some ideas that no matter what the space looks like, everyone's excited about. I think we've all have had a phase where we all wanted to start some type of t-shirt line. And we just thought our t-shirts would be the best or whatever. And we know that it's a super oversaturated market. I think there's always some exceptions there. But yeah, I think, for some people or a lot of entrepreneurs, you can have that high and low quickly collide in the beginning stages of this process of entrepreneurship. I guess the second stage is that planning that you love to do, that strategy. And this could also be a high as well, depending on if you've pulled another person in, if you're going at it alone, and you're just kind of hitting the ground running. Sometimes for others, if the low didn't come through your initial research, the planning could definitely be the stage where you start feeling a little down or doubting kind of this lofty goal of being an entrepreneur. And then quite honestly, part of that planning process is determining if you have the money to execute, and not having access to capital can really bring you down a bit. But depending on where you are in this planning stage, if you're able to kind of move through those initial lows, I guess you can say, now we get to the fun part of all of this, of being an entrepreneur, which is execution. And I think this is a mixed bag of highs and lows because there's various steps involved with the execution phase, right? And I think we do things inherently to try to continue to drive our motivation and high so we can level out the lows. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs need to ride that high to balance out all the fear that is going on in our minds at the start of a new venture or business.
Absolutely. I think that when you launch, that's one of the biggest like highs. It's scary, but usually that's when like everybody's super excited for you. You're super excited. You finally made it to this point, which is a very hard point to make it to. Like getting to the point where you have a service and you've launched and you're putting yourself out there for people to decide whether or not they're going to buy that from you is a really big milestone. And it always starts out, you know, at least for me, it always starts out with that high of like, yay, we did it. Like all this work is finally being out in the universe. And I find that the low comes, you know, maybe a month or two later when it's not an instant success. And you always, you know, everyone always wants to launch and be an instant success and have the problem of growing too fastly. And the low really starts to sink in when you're not an instant success and you actually have to work at, you know, becoming successful.
What? You have to work? What is that concept? I already did all the work in the planning and this lovely grand opening party. I have to actually put in the work? No, but no, that's true. I think that, you know, there's the managing of your own expectations, right? And I think a lot of new entrepreneurs don't know how to do that. They don't know what's realistic and what's actually like going to happen versus what they've drummed up in their minds. Earlier on, for both Marks and I, we just thought, oh my God, we're going to make $1 million on day 2, right? And it just does not work like that. It's a slow growth and it's a slow process. And sometimes you have instant successes. I mean, there are always exceptions to the rule, right? But I think that involves a little bit more context than we're actually given privy to, you know, at any given time. So
yeah, because it's super rare for entrepreneurs to get it right on their very first idea. Like maybe we didn't see the 5, 10, 15 other ideas that failed before this one became an instant success because they learned about all the, you know, from their failures beforehand. Or maybe like, you know, it's a celebrity or someone with an audience who launched and had a following already. I feel like when we're talking about, you know, we're talking about businesses on our podcast, we're mostly speaking to the people who haven't made it yet, don't have a big audience, are just trying to figure it out like we are.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's the majority of entrepreneurs. They're just like you and I, you know, less than 10 employees, you know, maybe up to 100, but just always trying to figure it out. And there's just so much that we don't know, that there are other instant successes that we see that really don't apply to us, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it. But yeah, even in that execution stage, you get to that official launch and it always looks good. You know, I think about all the businesses that we talked about that we launched or we shared on social media or with our friends. And I think outwardly it looks like, oh my God, you guys are doing it, or you guys are doing this, and I'm so proud of you. And like on the inside, we're like, I'm really afraid right now. Hence why we still are working. And yeah, we'll see kind of where this goes. And I think entrepreneurs also ride that high of that encouragement from family, friends, strangers. That is super helpful because, again, you're super vulnerable as an entrepreneur and you don't know how you're going to be received. And so when you are battling all of these feelings about imposter syndrome or worrying that your business is going to fail, it's really nice to have that balanced out with support from other people. And I really think it's this kind of mixed bag of everything that really allows entrepreneurs to go from step to step to step. Without the lows, you can't have the highs. And they kind of feed off of one another. And we see that a lot in entrepreneurship. I would say once you get past the execution and launch stage, the final stage in this kind of entrepreneurship world is scaling, right? So if you're experiencing some moderate success and your business is growing, now you got to figure out how to scale. And that is another beast that you don't think in the beginning of the process is going to be a problem, but it does come back to bite you if you don't have your processes planned or if you're growing beyond your control. Lauren and I have had line conversations about this week of how we're both experiencing these growing pains in our business, and we're focusing on scaling, and it's so hard.
I was going to say, I didn't think about it either, because it's like, wow, what a good problem to have. It seems ridiculous. Like, oh, we have too much business. Like, that's dumb. You don't think that too much business is a problem until you realize your quality is starting to dip, and that can really cause a lot of problems for you.
Absolutely. This is the make it or break it part of a lot of businesses. And we like to think it's in the beginning stages, right? Where you're creating and you have an idea or you're trying to execute, right? But that in relation to scaling is easy.
I feel like there's so many make it or break it moments in business.
You're absolutely right.
That's why so many businesses don't make it, is because there's so many of these make it or break it moments where it's like,
you're right. Yeah. And you're right. And you don't even know it until you get to that point. Until you're on that precipice of like, oh my God, I have to figure out what to do right now. We got to move fast. That's one of the good things about being kind of lean, is we can move and shift pretty quickly. We're pretty agile, huge organizations.
The thing I've noticed with scaling too is the people that feel it the most are the owners, because the bulk of the work is going to fall on the business owners. Because if you don't have this, the process is set in place to teach others and they're still learning. Like, if you haven't automated things, the bulk of the work is going to fall on you if you don't know how to scale.
I feel like scaling almost feels like a mini startup, right? Like, you are trying to get all these systems and processes and automations in place, the right people in place. And we're back to working those 12 to 15-hour days that we were working in the beginning. We feel it tenfold, these demands, and we know that it kind of trickles down to our workers and our staff, and they feel it too. And so we have to constantly work at alleviating those pains, because those pains can lead to burnout. And it's like, having your staff burn out while you're scaling is like the worst thing ever. And so, this is where, for some people, they're super excited that they are growing so fast. And for some, that can be kind of a low too, because it's like, holy crap, I was not prepared for this. And ultimately, I mean, I guess some would say a final stage to this entrepreneurship world, which we have not met yet, which is probably why I didn't want to touch on it, but is, the golden parachute. You've made it. You're at the top of the mountain. We're not there yet. We want to get there eventually, but we think it'll take some time before we do. So that's a whole different conversation that we're not prepared yet to have. So we'll go ahead and segue. And we're not there yet, so we're going to keep moving. We know nothing about that life, okay? We're trying to get to the top of the mountain. We're not there.
So we've been talking about how entrepreneurship is, filled with highs and lows in these different stages, and it never really feels stable, because it isn't. We take nothing for granted because we know how just unstable, instability, unstable.
Don't mind us, guys. We've had some delicious sangrias this morning, so
we're getting our shit together. Don't worry.
But you guys get it.
Oh my God. So we take nothing for granted because entrepreneurship is so unstable. There's no consistent income for years usually. And I mean, Bridget, how did you adjust to that instability going from your corporate full-time job to, working on your own business full-time?
Well, I mentioned this before and I'll say it again. I held on to work for so long so I could quickly go back if this entrepreneurship thing didn't work out. And I've always struggled with calling myself an entrepreneur or even believing that I was one. And so there was a lot of insecurity, quite honestly. And that was definitely driven by some of the lows that I experienced in terms of trying to plan and get to launch. There's just a lot of instability. And it's weird because when I first launched my consulting business, I got so much great feedback from my friends and family, right? But then it just kind of feels like business is not moving fast enough or growing quick enough that reflects all that encouragement that you received. So it's kind of this cognitive dissonance, and you're just overwhelmed. I just remember feeling so overwhelmed with everything I had to do. And when you're a consultant, sometimes starting out, you devote so much of your time to your current clients that you don't have a lot of time. You haven't left a lot of time to actually focus on strategy and growing the business. And that's where I fell. So I had all of these ideas in mind on how to properly execute or advertise or strategize and plan my business. But because I was devoting so much time to my current clients, I didn't have the time to do that. I didn't trust people to help me. Right. So my initial reaction was not to go hire someone to help me do this. It's like, I'm going to do it all on my own. Right. And that's because, unfortunately, I've suffered from being the one who always handled the group project and not trusting my classmates to carry their workload. And so it just kind of stuck with me, and I carried it into entrepreneurship. And that is like the wrong, I think, mentality to have. If I can give any advice, and I try to avoid doing that, it's try to identify who and how you can get help from and where, and even plan or budget to pay for that help, because it makes a world of difference, especially when you're starting out and when you have so much to do. So for me, kind of transitioning from the corporate world into entrepreneurship, again, I was very insecure. I didn't experience a lot of highs, and quite honestly, I didn't have my high until we got made easy to where it was doing, 5-figure months where I felt like, okay, I can kind of ease into this, right? And I think that's why a lot of people have their side hustles, because they want to grow something to a place where if they are going to jump out of the corporate world, they can do so, and they feel better about doing that.
Yeah, I definitely feel like more confident making that transition. So for me, I did not adjust well to the instability, and it was more around the instability around money and finances. So historically, since Brian and I have been together, I've always been the one that had the stable, corporate job. And Brian's had, the stable corporate jobs sometimes too, but he was always the one who would always, try to start a business and then jump back out and then jump back in. And I was the one that kind of kept us steady because that's what I wanted. Like, Brian can live in uncertainty so much better than I can. I like feeling stable. I like feeling in control. And so when I left, the corporate world to start Cozy Cactus, to work on Rotive, it was a really hard adjustment for me because there's no consistent income. I can't plan or budget, months out in advance, because it's like, we want to take a vacation, 6 months from now. I'm like, I don't know where our business is going to be. I don't know if we're going to make enough money by then, or if we're going to have to stay and hunker down, So that was a big adjustment for me. It was, again, I've talked with Brian about this, and it's like there are some people who can just live with the unknown and stuff like that and have that confidence that, we'll figure something out.
Right.
So it definitely took me a while to get used to the highs and lows of entrepreneurship, the ups and downs of revenue, and I feel like I'm there now. But making that first jump, if you're a person who loves stability, it's going to be a rough ride in the beginning.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I didn't even touch on that. I was talking about being so insecure about just making that leap. But no, I think you're right. I think that insecurity is driven by a lot of things. And for me, that did include finances, right? Am I going to be able to afford my lifestyle? Am I going to be able to pay my bills? How far am I going to have to dip into my savings? That was always worrisome. And, full transparency, we have dipped into our savings, to make sure we were able to stay afloat. And I think that I agree with you. I did not transition well either for that. And it's been a hard pill to swallow to say, I'm actually not cut out for the corporate world, even though I thought I was. And now that we are growing our business and we have some moderate success, I feel a lot better about accepting that reality. Like, I don't need to prove my worth, essentially. I'm proving it right now. And there is a mind shift that takes place. But yeah, it's a ton of conflict. And again, I think part of those insecurities really revolve around imposter syndrome, trying to make yourself be who you want to become and then project that to others. And it just can be a tough situation.
Yeah. So speaking of moderate success, what are some of the highs that you've experienced on your business, the times where you have felt really, really good?
Yeah, so the first high that we've experienced, I think I talked about this in a previous episode, is the first time we hit $10,000 a month in monthly sales. But shortly thereafter, right at that time that was happening, we were contacted by a large property management company to do what is called in the cleaning business, college turn. And a college turn is where you are contracted out to clean all of the apartment homes that, incoming students are going to be living in. And depending on how it's priced or structured, it can be super lucrative because it's a really condensed window and you can make a lot of money in a 10 to 14 day time frame. So that was a super high, like, oh my God, we're actually doing something right, because they reached out to us. They found, they got the contract out for us to review, and it's like, oh my gosh, like, we're a legit company, we're taking in contracts, right, not just regular customers. And so that was one of the first highs we've experienced as a company. And then shortly thereafter, a few months later, we got a huge contract with Waste Management. They have a training facility out here in Glendale, and they hire new trainees all over the country, and they fly them here, and they have another facility in Florida, and they train them for, I believe, 2 weeks. And we won the work to turn over their kind of corporate apartment homes and, cleaning those units that they have for those trainees. So that was a huge one for us too, because that was the first time we really had to focus on getting like infrastructure. So we had our own apartment home space with the garage at this community that the waste management trainees were coming to, and we had all our cleaning equipment and supplies, and we got everything set up. We got a new process put in place just for that particular scope of work, and that was a really good high, because now we can say we work with Waste Management. We've done this, or it just continued to add credibility to our business and legitimize us, and that felt really good. How about you guys?
Let's see. Getting, our first road client, your first sale, I feel like is always a really good high, even with Cozy Cactus. Getting that first sale, even if it was from my cousin, like, I don't care. Felt great. Because, people care. Like, people won't spend money on something they don't think is worth it. So even if you are family. I think that the first big high for me with Rotive, it came last summer, because we had really struggled for the first 5 months of the year. We had COVID going on. Things were not trending in a great direction. And we had run out. Like, our savings had definitely gone right near the bottom of zero, which is super sad. When you save up thousands of dollars only to see it all go away. But things turned around for us, and we hit our stride, I think, June, July, and August. Like, it started with June, and we hit like 30K for a month for the first time.
Oh,
and
nice.
Thank goodness, because we were struggling just to get to 10K, and all of a sudden we just jumped up to 30K.
Right.
And we're like, okay, is this a fluke? And then we hit it again the next month, and then we hit it again for a third month, and we were like, holy shit, this is super exciting. We need to hire somebody now. Like, things are trending up. So that was pretty awesome. I feel like a lot of the highs come from the revenue highs, because, it's like, we finally can have some emergency
that's what we're
savings.
Doing let's be frank. That's what we're doing it for.
And, immediately after that, it went down again. So it's like,
Yep.
And now we're back on the up and up. This Q1 has been a pretty big high, hitting 40K twice. That was exciting. Oh, making it through the first year. It wasn't like a high, but it was definitely a difference of confidence for me. That felt really good. And then I think the last kind of high that comes to mind was when I actually left my job and started working on Roto full time, because I just felt like a weight, because I was struggling in the previous position. So it felt like a weight.
There are constantly good times, boo. No, I had that same high, like when I finally transitioned full time into Made Easy and was able to kind of really put my mark on it, because I was surprised at the growth we were doing on such a part-time capacity that I thought, oh my gosh, I can't wait to do it now in this full-time situation. And immediately, you know, not to toot my own horn, but as soon as I got in full-time, growth started, you know, just going up and up and up and up. There were some problems that still came with that. And that is, you listen, you always got to balance out the good with the bad. And, you know, I definitely identified some weaknesses in my like leadership and what I can do. And so those have been constant improvements over the year. And that 2020 allowed us to really focus on that. Like I mentioned before, our margins, our numbers, communication with our staff, all of those things really vastly improved. But yeah, I mean, I feel like we're constantly kind of going through those highs, and like you, we had a great first quarter. And I mean, at the same time, because of how fast we're growing, I definitely experienced some lows, like, oh my God, like, what are we going to do? Like, you know, but
yeah, what are some of those lows? We've talked about the great highs and happiness of being an entrepreneur. And I know we've talked about lows in previous episodes, but let's just go through them again.
Yeah.
What are some of the lows you've experienced?
Man, the biggest low or so far recently, I would say would have to be oddly this coin. It's like a coin of the scaling, right? So the high is scaling, but then the low is scaling. And we're trying to get everything together. We're getting rid of our contractors, transitioning to employees, and that is such a task. And our lows have included, you know, not being able to work with some of our contractors right now because of, you know, how we're transitioning and what we're changing, and then it not being a fit for them anymore. Or it's tough, you know, balancing the demand with available teams. And it's just been really, really hard because, again, we've been working 12, 15-hour days easily. And so that is kind of a low, because I do think it's important for us to recharge and have some downtime, and we really have not been able to do that. We've been working 7 days a week, and, you know, we see the light at the end of the tunnel, but it's been tough, you know. And I definitely end each day with a sense of gratitude. Again, I'm grateful that I'm working on this for us, and it's our business, and we're growing it together, me and my husband. But yeah, even though we're together, we're not together. So we're not spending time together. We're not doing certain things together. And it's just, I've ordered so much takeout. I'm sick of takeout. I can't even, nothing sounds good anymore. I'm like, so I'm trying to end my day, at least have a kind of soft break between 4 and 6 so I can prep and get dinner ready. And then maybe work a couple of hours between 8 and 10, and then, you know, try to retire or something and get some downtime. But yeah, it's been tough. So those are a couple of our lows. How about you?
It's definitely, you know, similar, like more so for Brian with the late nights and early mornings because he is client facing. What else? I mean, we've talked about, you know, our savings going down. Yeah. There have been times where, like in the beginning of, you know, last year, we needed to make a minimum of like 8 or 10,000 to just break even and keep going. And we were making like 5,000 and then 5,000 again, and then like 8,000. So we weren't quite like, we weren't sustaining what we needed to do just for us not to look for other jobs. Right. So the low there is just like, I'm just worried about like, oh man, like we're not making it. Like our savings are almost gone. It's like, do we take out of our 401k? Do we need to like move, like get a lower mortgage payment or rent? Because, you know, we got this house when I was making a really nice salary at Salesforce, but And we're like,
Right.
oh, we could easily afford that. And then you switch to becoming an entrepreneur and you're like, oh my God, like this is a
Yeah.
huge expense and we're trying to just survive. So there was definitely some fear there. What else? Anytime you like make a mistake for clients, I know for Brian, that's when he feels the worst. Like, you know, we're human. Like I would say anyone listening, vast majority of the time we're killing it and we provide a really good service. So don't get the wrong impression.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
you're human. Little mistakes will be made. And that's when he definitely feels the worst, is if he feels like he let down a client, a customer, or a partner. So those are kind of the lows. And then, like, you know, we've talked about insecurity as well. So there's like the mental health part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I think that that's part of the reason we just wanted to do this podcast, so we can talk about everything that we're experiencing as we're experiencing it, right? A lot of stuff you guys are hearing are in lifetime. Like, shit's been happening this week, you know, and probably will continue to happen in the future. Yeah, so it can definitely get lonely and isolating. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs probably have felt this during COVID, you know, with the remote working environment and things like that. And it's tough. And I think it's more important now than ever to kind of lean on one another and try to kind of vent and talk about our frustrations and what's happening. And that's been super helpful for both Marcus and I to kind of just, let me ping this off with somebody real quick, make sure I'm not tripping. And you come to learn that you're not tripping. But then you also somehow throughout that conversation, you get some type of idea or inspiration to help solve your problem. And even, you know, I talk to my admin staff, like, you know, what ideas do you guys have with regard to demand and staffing? And they threw out some really great ideas. Just kind of opening that dialogue and letting them know that you feel it too and understand what they're going through as well. So,
yeah. Nice. So sometimes you're not experiencing a high or a low and you're just kind of in a lull and coasting. How do you deal with lulls? Because we know that motivation is like fleeting. It goes up and down. What do you do when you're just kind of coasting?
Man, I think in a weird way, you gotta coast. Like, you have to settle a little bit to rest. And I think the reason entrepreneurs will get into this lull is because they are tired. You know, they're exhausted. They maybe aren't feeling inspired at that moment. They have some personal things going on that's taking their attention away from the business. And ideally, when this happens, you're in a space where you've kind of reached a peak growth and maybe you're plateauing a little bit, or you're just kind of maintaining the status quo. But you could just be not feeling it, you know, like, I need to just turn my brain off a minute, travel, go do something to get inspired again about my business. Honestly, some entrepreneurs, depending on who you are, look at their business as a way out. So they're not even really inspired by the work that their business does. And so I think it's easier for them to coast there or kind of have this lull. But I think that you just have to kind of ride that wave. It's a wave too. It's not just high, low, but there is those kind of those low waves that kind of carry you through. And I think you just kind of have to roll with it, and sit in it for a while. And I think most entrepreneurs come out on the other side having some inspiration or knowing exactly what their next step is. And typically entrepreneurs have someone in their circle or space that notices, right? They know that, okay, this person's kind of off, or they're not on their A game, or they're kind of chilling right now. I'm gonna let them chill, but then I'm gonna pull them back. And so I think it's important to have those people in your groups too that can help kind of recalibrate you and bring you back to life.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that lulls are sometimes, like you said, for rests, because you'll get so burnt out too easily. I think that being connected to your purpose with the business and your goals, you know, again, we talked about goal setting as your North Star, and having that purpose helps keeping you going. But I also found that, like, I mean, I can't speak for everybody, but for me personally, like, I don't like staying stagnant for too long, you know, like, if things are going well and they're going fine, like, sure, I'll coast a little bit and enjoy it if you need the rest. But at a certain point, I'm like, all right, we're not making progress, and that bothers me. And I'm like, I want to constantly be improving. I want to constantly be making progress, and it's, moving the goalpost, reaching new goals, and it's like the fun and challenge in it, because I think that you do get uninspired if you're staying in that lull for too long, and you just lose your purpose, you lose your motivation, and it's hard to get it back.
Yeah, I think lulls happen by accident. I feel like they happen a lot around like the holiday season. You're tired and maybe you tell yourself, you know what, I'm going to take these next couple of days off. I'm going to take this week off. And then before you know it, you kind of start getting back in the fray, and you're kind of doing the bare minimum, right? You're not doing everything that you can to continue that growth or on that growth trajectory. And then next thing you know, 2 weeks have passed and 3 weeks have passed. And you're like, holy crap, like what's been going on here? Let me check in. And I think most entrepreneurs they have this internal thing where like, okay, I got to check myself back in. I've done it. Marx has done it. We've seen other entrepreneurs do it. They're kind of like, I got to get back in the game here. And, I think that one way to kind of navigate this is to just do monthly check-ins or have some quarterly reviews, look at your goals, see if you're meeting your metrics, and just make sure you're managing the overall health of your business. Like you mentioned, setting those goals early on is super helpful, because then you can come back and revisit and see if you've met those goals or even have tried to attempt those goals. And that, I think, will help you kind of get through that lull phase and then on to whatever next step is necessary in your business.
I think too that sometimes you learn that you really can't afford a lull. And I found out is, I'm going to take it back a little bit. So I talked about how we hit that high last summer of, hitting $30,000, over 3 months. And we're like super happy we're going to hire somebody. And then we immediately went back down into a low. We went from, 30,000 to all of a sudden dropping to 16 and 18 because this is our fault. At the same time, hiring our new employee, we wanted to test doing a cross-country road trip because we do want to be able to work remotely as entrepreneurs. And we're like, well, we need to test out some of the kinks. We need to learn like what works, what doesn't. And we had done smaller, little trips, and we're like, okay, we're going to do a big one. And this was a terrible time to have these learnings, and our sales dropped like by nearly 50% because we weren't as productive on the road. We realized you can't like have a travel day on the same day as a work day because of you get kicked out of the Airbnb early. It's hard to have clients. You're on the move. It's like it was a hot mess. And on top of that, like Brian, is our only salesperson, and he's the only one who's can train our new employee. And so we didn't realize, like, not only was his time, on the road taking away from sales, but time training the new employee was taking away from time doing sales calls. So it was like this perfect storm of crap. It was a lot of hard lessons that we learned, like right after coming off on that high, thinking like, all right, like we can coast for a little bit, do this, road trip and still work on the road and all that. And it really hurt our revenue for months. Like October and November were shit. December was looking really sad too. And then we were able to start turning it around in December. And it's just like, okay, like we have to, like, maybe we can't afford a lull yet. Like, we have to be very careful about how much time we take off, or like, time management and stuff. So like I said, there's a lot of things going on there. And that was also the time where I kind of accepted that uncertainty, like, is just part of the life. And I was proud of myself because I was like, well, October, November, December is not looking great, but I'm not freaking out as much as I was at the beginning of the year, because we had, built up that confidence, like, hey, we can turn this around. Like, I think that you do, with the highs and lows, you do start to manage and become a little bit more stoic. You become a little bit more even, and you're just kind of like, oh, we're having a good month now. Great. we're having a low month now. That's okay. Like you just, you get used to it, which was something I was not used to at first. I was like, oh my God, we're too low. And oh my God, we're so high. Like, this is great. And it's just like all over the place. Like, I reel it in.
It's a roller coaster. Because listen, as soon as we hit our first $10,000 month in our first 7 months in being in business, we quickly went down to like 7,500. And so it was just constant, like up and down, up and down, up and down. And then we didn't hit another 5-figure month until I believe that we reached that $10,000 mark in June. We didn't get another 5-figure month until October. So we had those 3 months where we're like, okay, now, you know, what are we going to do? And we knew we would get there, but it was frustrating. It was very frustrating to kind of have that high and then you're stuck and, you know, you're told the cleaning business is slow in the summer or, you know, try this or do that. And you don't want to hear that. I mean, you do and you don't. Like, it kind of consoles you, but then it's kind of like, like, why now, you know? And you hate to hear that as you're gaining momentum, something outside of your control contributes to this kind of downward trend. And it can be really tough, but like you mentioned, when you kind of build up the confidence from those early successes, that's what I'm saying. It's kind of like this weird thing where like entrepreneurship, the process and all the stages, like they all work together to kind of, okay, you can do it. Like this happened. So you don't worry. It can happen again. And it's just this constant, like, I don't know, it's just a tug of war.
You just get used to it from experience. Like, because I had done, you know, Cozy Cactus before, there was super highs and lows. And, you know, Brian has tried many different things. I know you and Marcus have tried many different things. Like, at some point, you just kind of get used to it and you kind of accept it as your fate. And you become okay with it. You're like, you know what? I know what, it's like, you know what to expect now. I think in the beginning, entrepreneurs don't know what to expect. They think they're going to be really successful in the beginning. And you go through the motivation dips. You don't know when you're going to actually hit your stride and be successful. Like Brian and I didn't know things were going to turn around last year. It took us 5-6 months before things turned around, and that's a long time to go with no success and your savings gone and like in the middle of the pandemic, like we were just like, oh my God, like what have we done? And so I think that you learn to accept the highs and lows. You live with the uncertainty. Like, I don't love it, but
it's not my favorite.
After having more and more experience, you get used to it. And I think it does help with, like, you don't take anything for granted and you just weather it more even keeled. Yeah,
man, I can tell you so much right now, Lauren, how frequently and often that at least for me, I've adjusted my acceptance of things. Like, oh yes, this is going to be $1 million a year business. Oh, okay, I'm okay if it's $500,000 a year. Okay, constantly play with that because again, that experience teaches you quite a bit, and you start reframing things, and you're just like, you know what? I just need to make sure our bills are covered. I don't need to be hella rich. I just don't want to go back to the corporate world or go get a job. As long as we can cover our bases, then we can really start thinking about other things. And, it's crazy because unfortunately, I do know a lot of businesses sometimes can't or aren't as fortunate where they can kind of have these lulls for 5-6 months and still stay in business and then come out on the other side stronger. And I know there's this thing of staying the course and, things will improve, but I feel like that's not fair to say to everybody, you know what I mean? Because things vary from industry to industry, from business to business, and things that happen beyond our control, like a damn pandemic, right? And a lot of companies just could not weather that storm. And it's not by anything that they did wrong. It was just a freaking, beast that we couldn't control. And so I do think that most entrepreneurs already have the intent of staying in the course, right? But I say that to say, like, staying the course is not going to be the solution all the time.
And it's true. Like,
right?
You don't know if it's going to work out. Like, I like, maybe it's a false sense of confidence, you know, that
Right.
things will turn around for us. You can only handle like a lull for so long. Brian says, like, you know, at some point it's not working, and at some point you may have to, you know, throw in the towel. Like,
Yeah.
maybe it will never turn around. That's always a fear, you know.
Absolutely.
For entrepreneurs, and why we don't take anything for granted, because just because you have a few good months doesn't mean that you're still going to be in business a year later.
No, absolutely. I've seen, unfortunately, so many businesses kind of ride this wave or get this to this peak, and they come crashing down and they have nothing. A lot of that typically is about poor finances, you know, not managing or not scaling properly and overspending and things like that. But yeah, in the beginning stages of being an entrepreneur, that first year, first 2 years, right? If you know, you can't weather through that, it can be really tough. I think once you get past year 2, you are able to better navigate certain terrains, and you could probably see yourself in this business up to year 5, year 6, whatever the case may be. But definitely those first 2 years, man, so much uncertainty, so much ambiguity. It's definitely unstable, and you do have to come to terms with that. And I think people do that differently.
Yeah.
So I was going to say, for me, it was drinking lots of wine, but I know
sure we'll promote that.
Won't promote that, but yeah. And I say that kind of just jokingly, but yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I would say it's a mix of wine and caffeine, because they have to keep going and have the energy to figure stuff out. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely exactly. Which I think entrepreneurs, if you don't have it, you will get it.
Yeah, it's a muscle. You will build it up. You will be more and more resilient. You just got to keep picking yourself back up.
Yeah. So I know I talked about the stages of entrepreneurship, and quite honestly, how they all work together in terms of helping us navigate highs and lows. I really think part of that too, in terms of being an entrepreneur, is really understanding your purpose as one, an entrepreneur or business owner, and 2, within your business and your company. I think it's more than okay to have a business where you don't necessarily care about that industry particularly, right? You care about being an entrepreneur, and you're caring about providing for yourself or your family, and then funding any future aspirations or goals. Knowing that purpose, I feel, will set you up for the long run. You know, I tell Marcus all the time, because of who he is and what he always wanted to do, he was going to be an entrepreneur regardless. You know, that's just what he was going to do. It was all kind of twisty, windy roads for the last 15 years or so, but he's doing it now because that's his purpose, and he was very adamant about that. I think that your purpose will sometimes change over time because we change, but I think when you tap into that, it allows you to prepare for a marathon versus a race. And you can kind of sit back, do the work, and like you mentioned, accept that this is what it's going to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, you know, I think Brian is, you know, same way as Marcus, like his purpose was he was always going to be an entrepreneur, and it was just a matter of when and how. For me, that had changed because I had, you know, never really viewed myself as an entrepreneur, and I've slowly been, you know, changing into what I feel now is very entrepreneurial. And I definitely feel you on the, like, you know, I'm not passionate about Rotive. Like, I like the work that I do. Any job I do with like 100% effort.
Right.
But, you know, I think the purpose for me in this current business is like to do a lot of learning, because this one is working out. Like, you know, Cozy Cactus has not really been working out, and I was like, okay, I need to learn a lot more. Like, this isn't the avenue where I'm learning, and Rotive is. So I think it's been such a great learning experience. I think it's going to open up more possibilities and opportunities down the road for other ideas. Like you said, entrepreneurs usually have more than one thing that they want to pursue and try. So yeah, I think that purpose helps. But yeah, I don't know. I just I'm trying to learn and enjoy the highs, and be more stoic during the lows and see
Yeah.
where it takes us.
Absolutely. I find that having a routine in your personal life definitely helps navigate those lows. So, you know, having your breakfast at a certain time every day, lunch or dinner, making sure you dedicate time to unwinding. For me, the last 5 months or so, roughly, I've been establishing an hour of like some type of activity, workout activity. Walking, using the Oculus headset for virtual reality, you know, something to get myself moving. And I feel so much better when I do that. And yeah, I think also just leaning on support with other entrepreneurs, friends who get it, you know, venting, and just being able to constantly pull inspiration from other people. And like you mentioned, just learning. This is a learning process, and you will experience a lot of highs and lows. But for me, so far, it's been worth it, you know.
Yeah, I love what we do. I love the highs, don't love the lows,
Yeah.
but like I said, I've accepted it as like, this is what it is. Like,
Yeah. I think when you give into that, it's so much more freeing. You know, you're like, not so much as just where the cards fall, they fall, because you still have your life and your livelihood that you have to manage and maintain. But understanding that sometimes things, you're doing the best that you can at this given moment. And if things don't go the way that you want them to go, because of who you are, you're resilient, you're strong, you're going to figure it out.
and it takes experience and practice sometimes, you know, it's not something that I was immediately good at right off the bat. I struggled making that transition. And like you said, it's very freeing to accept like, okay, this is how it is. And that's okay. And we're going to keep pushing forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Wonderful. Well, we hope you guys have gleaned a couple of things. And until next time.
Yeah. Like, subscribe, share, follow us on Instagram or LinkedIn or YouTube. And yeah, until next time.
See you then.